Can you also tell us the difference between conditional and unconditional I-20?
Okay, the I-20 is the technical name given by the government of the United States for an admission letter. Different countries call it by different names, but because the United States is such a popular destination, most of us tend to call an admission letter from a foreign university as an I-20. In New Zealand, it's called an offer of place. So you can be given a conditional offer of place or an unconditional offer of place. Now, when you're applying for a course in New Zealand, there is a certain criteria that they look at. They would look at your academics, of course. They would look at your English skill, which means you need to have passed either the IELTS exam or the TOEFL exam, which are they're called IELTS and TOEFL. These are the English tests that are a prerequisite. You also would be asked a few other questions, just to ensure that you have the requisite marks and all this. If you have met all those prerequisites, you are then given an unconditional offer letter. So there are no conditions attached to that offer of place. But sometimes a student may be still in the final year of his or her degree and maybe still waiting for the final consolidated marks sheet or the actual degree certificate. And there is not enough time to wait for it and then apply for an admission. In such instances, what we do is we collect the rest of the documents and then we make an application to be given a conditional offer of place. So the University Department of Admissions looks at that application and says, okay, this guy's got everything. There's only one thing missing, and that's his final year marks sheet. So they say, we are admitting Mr. XYZ into this particular course with one condition. The condition is that he should also submit to us the final year marks sheet of his exam, which he has not yet appeared for. Okay, so before the student makes an application for the visa, he needs to have fulfilled that condition and procure an unconditional offer letter from the university.
Like you just said, the students have to give the IELTS to, prove their efficiency in the English language. Is it mandatory for them to give any aptitude test like the GRE?
Not for New Zealand institutions, which is a big advantage. So if some of you prospective students are a little lazy and they would rather do just one exam, I think New Zealand is a good destination. But jokes apart, I think New Zealand institutions tend to assess a bit more on their overall academic performance rather than standalone exams like GRE, GMAT, and those kinds of things. So their only requirement is the English, which is either the IELTS or TOEFL, and thankfully no GRE or GMAT is required.
Does the New Zealand government have any ties with the Indian government to provide scholarship to the students?
At this stage, there are a lot of scholarships available at the PhD level. In fact, the government of New Zealand has set aside a huge amount of money to encourage people from other countries to come and pursue a PhD in the country, because they want to make New Zealand into a knowledge hub. And by inviting serious researchers into the country, they are hoping they can create that bulk of research knowledge base within the country. So there are lots of money available to be given away as scholarships and funding towards research scholars. There are some other scholarships available under the NZ Aid category, but not too many. So I would like to encourage students to think they will get scholarships by the dozen in New Zealand. As such, the government of India and New Zealand are not working on any joint mechanisms at this stage. But I'm aware, because I'm just back from a meeting in Delhi at the New Zealand High Commission, and I'm aware that the Trade Department is talking to some leading Indian banks to ensure that education loans become easier to pursue studies in New Zealand, and I'm also playing a small role in that to talk to some banks and bring about that. But scholarships as a whole are definitely available at the PhD level, not so much at the postgraduate and the undergraduate level. Yeah.
Can you give us some information about the medical tests which the students need to undergo before they get to New Zealand?
Okay, primarily the medical test is conducted not just for New Zealand but for any country. Most of them ask for a medical test before you apply for a longer term visa, like a student visa or a work visa or migration or H1Bs, so on and so forth. I mean, the purpose of the medical test is quite simple. It is to ensure that the person who is going into that country is healthy, and that they will not pose any risk to that particular government for long-term hospitalization or ongoing medical treatment, which is of course a burden for that particular government. So obviously nobody would, I mean, you wouldn't let an unhealthy person into your house. Likewise, no government would like to let an unhealthy person into their country. So that's what the medical test is all about. So New Zealand particularly is looking to screen out TB. There is no instance of tuberculosis in New Zealand, and they're very, very particular about screening that out. So there is a particular test that is done at chest X-ray, and it's also looked at by a TB specialist to certify that the person is clear of TB. They're obviously looking at various ailments. They have 2 panel doctors here in Hyderabad who are appointed by the government of New Zealand. So your medical test cannot be done anywhere else. It has to be on a prescribed form and only with these panel doctors. So once you have that medical test, they seal the envelope and then they give it to you, and then you're supposed to come and submit it to us, and we in turn will submit it to